Okay, we're ready.
Good morning. It is July 20th, 1921 at 9:31 in the morning. This is a meeting of the Arizona State Board of Education Certification Advisory Committee. I'd like to call this to order. Jessica, could you read the roll, please?
I've actually got that one, Chair Peasley, so I can run down there for you. Member Tabo?
Here.
Member Farah?
Here.
Member Dumler?
Here.
Member Hendrickson?
Here.
Member Janesh Panel?
We do have I just got a notice from her. She did not get the link. Could you send that link to her, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Member Tyree? And he did, by the way, let us know he was unable to make it due to a doctor's appointment. Member Lighting?
Here.
Member Garcia?
Here.
Member Weber?
Here.
Member Horn?
Here, good morning.
Member Corporate?
Here.
And Member Spear, who I think also informed us she would not be able to make it. So you do have a quorum, Madam Chair, and I will send that email off to Member Janesh now, right now.
All right, thank you very much. As we have been doing throughout this time of closures due to the pandemic at ADE, I would like to turn facilitation of the meeting over to Ketra Baden.
Thank you, members. And I think first up is a executive director's report. I do not have anything to report, and also just a reminder, I'm not the executive director. And so we could probably go straight over to call to the public. And just as a reminder for all those watching and also for the members, because we are virtual, the call to the public, the link is provided in the agenda. And folks can register through Zoom to speak. They do have a deadline to do that, which is usually the day before. It was yesterday at noon. We didn't receive any calls to the public at this meeting, so we can move on straight to the meat of the agenda, which is agenda item number 3. So this is bringing back the item that the committee looked at the first time earlier this month. This is the proposed new K-5 literacy endorsement as the result of Senate Bill 1572, which was signed into law by the governor earlier this year. And the committee had some good discussion on it and some questions and also some suggested changes. So ADE was good enough to put together some of that feedback and work on some of that feedback and provide some recommended changes, and also provided, because some of those questions that were brought up at the last meeting were things that were more in the guidance arena. ADE provided examples of what that guidance could look like. It's draft still, so the committee isn't going to be approving those guidance docs, but we did think it would be helpful for you to get an idea of kind of what they would look like, and kind of see how this would be rolled out a little more specifically. So if Jessica, you could pull up the Word doc that has the rule draft changes, and it's I think pretty self-explanatory in some ways, and then I'll hand it over to Bruce to see if Bruce has anything else to add. Some of this was modified, specifically the language on lines 4 through 6 and the corresponding changes in 7 and 8 to kind of streamline that a bit and try to make it a little more clear. There were a lot of questions about what elementary content areas meant, and I think we felt this would probably just make it a little bit easier to understand. I think that language, and Bruce can correct me if I'm wrong, I think that language was trying to add some specificity and try to clarify things, and it seemed like based on the committee's discussion, it actually maybe went in the opposite direction. The changes on the science of reading instruction was a good catch from Member Lighting, who was able to catch that. That's why we sent out that additional draft, which is shown here and included here, to make sure that we were accurately capturing the big five, as they're usually called in reading. And she'd probably be able to speak to that better than I can. Our literacy experts over at ADE aren't joining us on this one. But that was a small but important change. The language on line 17, you could see we added on or before. That was essentially a technical change to make sure that we were that we were capturing people who were also getting certified on that date. I guess a strict reading of that rule as it was before could have meant that they were sort of in limbo or had to have the other language applied to them. And then scrolling down, I believe, well, we did have one other change on the second page, which was around this alternative pathway. And we discussed that the board would be adopting the criteria for that alternative pathway. We actually had a good first meeting with ADE and read on about a kind of proposal to put together to start vetting that. But there was a request by the committee to have some clarifying language just to make crystal clear that the board would be establishing that criteria, and that would be coming at a later date. So we added that. So Bruce, is there anything you wanted to provide in more specificity than what I hit on, or anything that you want to maybe correct even that I said incorrectly?
No, I don't believe so. So I'm hoping that the definition change is a little clearer. And then of course, those definitions are applied to the numbers just below them. Again, those were definitions that then are used throughout the rest of the rule in 2 and 3, which are the requirements.
Great. So with that, I think a lot of the chunk of those changes and discussion from our first meeting were around those things from lines 4 through 8, and tried to be responsive to those. So with that, happy to open it up to any questions or comments or concerns that the committee might have.
Okay, thank you very much, Ketcher and Bruce. Bruce, again, thanks to you and your team for assembling this great amount of information and providing the clarity that we had discussed. In reviewing my notes, this looks like it meets the concerns that we had and when we talked about when we met the last time. So those are my comments. Any others?
I have a question, but it's on the guidance documents, so I will wait if we're going to look at those next.
I too, Chairman Peasley, I would like to thank the department for such a thorough review of all of our comments and their response to our questions. I think that it's a very well laid out document and easy to follow. I was glad that there was not, in quote, additional hours, but more specificity to the hours that we already offer in at least our approved program. So thank you for the hard work that you did. And I think that the document and the certificate, the endorsement is very clear.
Chair Peasley, I have a quick question as well. So the alternative certification pathway, which is becoming a pathway for certification that is pretty prevalent. So the program itself would take care of the coursework requirements for those that are going through that 2-year program for alternative certification. Is that correct?
Great question.
Madam Chair and Dr. Corporich, and Bruce can correct me if I'm wrong, but yes, the language of the bill also requires all approved educator preparation programs to ensure that they have the coursework and any other things they need to put in place so that their candidates, when they leave their programs, can qualify for this endorsement, of course, with the assessment that they'll have to take as well. So yes, the programs should be changing course if needed to accommodate that.
Okay, thank you. And my other question for the certification aspect of this is, what about a lot of the administrators carry on their certificate throughout they have their admin and their teaching certificate. And so but they're not in the classroom, they're not teaching. Would they be required to continue to get these coursework hours for the literacy endorsement?
Madam Chair and Dr. Corporich, I saw Bruce raise his hand, so I could probably kick it to him. I think my 2 cents is that the requirement for the requirement to obtain the endorsement is tied to whether or not you're providing instruction in K-5 and providing literacy instruction even more specifically. So if you're an admin who's carrying forward their cert, their teaching cert in addition to their admin cert, my understanding would be you wouldn't be required to get the endorsement unless you stopped being an AP or a principal or whatever it is and started jumping in on a more regular basis, I would even say, in providing instruction. I see Bruce nodding, so I hope that means that I was in line there.
Okay,
And a thumbs up.
that
A nod and a thumbs
that
up.
makes sense. Thank you very much.
You got it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions about the endorsement itself?
Yes. I had one, just as it relates to teachers that are going to get this endorsement or need this endorsement on their existing certificate before they are due to renew their certificate. When I read it as they need to get the endorsement on by 2028, correct?
Madam Chair and Member Tabo, for anybody who currently has a certificate, they would have until 2028. Correct.
So does that involve them renewing the entire certificate when they go in, or will they make 2 trips and cost related? That came from our HR department. They were just wanting to make sure they could answer those questions when teachers asked them about getting that endorsement on their certificate. So they get it by 2028, they have the endorsement, but they're not due to renew their certificate until 2030. And I don't know if that's the case or not. They just asked the question.
Yeah, Madam Chair and Member Tabo, again, Bruce can correct me if I'm wrong, but they would have to get it by 2028. They wouldn't be renewing their cert until it expired. So yeah, they would have to, I guess, make 2 trips. They would have to get that endorsement sometime between when it was created in 2028, and then just like they normally would, they would go back and renew their cert. Bruce and Maura can correct me. That was my understanding, but I could be wrong.
If I may,
Please.
Members of the committee and Member Thibault. So endorsements are always add-ons to a certificate. And as long as you maintain a certificate that an endorsement's on, you never have to re-up that. And so renewal is really focused on the primary certificate. So let's say it's an elementary. And so if an elementary is not due until 2031, then that's when it needs to be renewed, and the trip down can be via the online portal or mail. It doesn't, they don't need to come out, but they can add the endorsement or approved areas at any time, and those are attached. So that is a separate service, a one-time. If they maintain their credentials throughout the rest of their life, they just keep renewing the primary credentials, and all of those are along for the ride.
Okay, thank you.
I saw Member Garcia has her hand up as well.
Thank you, Catcher. This again goes to Bruce. How much is the cost for an educator or a teacher to get the additional certification or the endorsement?
So, Member Garcia and members of the board, the fees are set in board rule and state statute, and it's $60 total for an endorsement.
Okay.
And it's that includes $30 for an evaluation and $30 for the issuance of the endorsement.
Okay, can I follow up as well? Sorry. It also refers to the assessment that is going to be needed in order to apply for it. So as mentioned, and we still are unaware how much that assessment is going to cost them as well, because that's still being created.
Members of the committee and Member Garcia, I believe if it's Pearson exams range from, I think on the low end of about $90 to $95 for the exam up into like 110, 120, if I recall right. And that doesn't include any practice materials or that type of thing. So I would, although the test has not been considered or adopted, I would imagine that the fees would be probably in that ballpark.
Okay, and then my last question, my last question is the professional development for a veteran educator. I know from last meeting it was shared that it's the intent that ADE is going to be able to provide most of that as far as for free online, etc. And that will have to take over the next 7 years. They have an opportunity to take them over the next 7 years. And I know a lot of districts are using different fundings in order to pay for that. And if that research or there are changes to that professional development over the 7 years, as long as they take whatever's in front of them right there, then take the test, then pay for the endorsement, they're okay, unless we go through this process again and there's another piece of legislation, right? Am I?
And Member Garcia, rest of the members, it's kind of like I kind of look back at the SEI training, right?
Yeah.
That kind of has morphed over time.
Yeah.
But from a certification desk perspective, once it's approved and you have taken it, if you choose to wait 3 years to come in and utilize it, it was approved.
Okay.
And so, by and large, we accept that, unless it got disapproved.
Right. Okay.
But that hasn't happened with SEI. It has changed, but we still qualify folks that have had, especially coursework on transcripts that we take, and then the trainings have been posted and we take that. So I would expect that there'll be some time period where they can use that training without any concern.
Okay. Thank you.
And then I do have a question to clarify that applicants going through the alternative process with verification, they do not need, yes, thank you very much. That is section 5, that they don't need to take the reading assessment, correct?
Madam Chair, that's correct. And what we're working on and proposing and why that language was included was to capture the cream of the crop educators, the best of the best. And that's in addition to those who don't already hold a reading endorsement or reading, I think specialist is the other one. So it is intended to capture, what will probably be a pretty narrow group of educators.
Oh, good. Thank you very much.
Chair Peasley, I have one more question. So the validation or verification of experience in teaching reading, will there be a portal? Will that just be a letter? Will that comes from the district? How will that be submitted to the Arizona Department of Education?
Madam Chair and Dr. Corcoran, I will defer to Bruce and the CERT desk on that one.
Madam Chair, members, and Member Cooperage, right now that process is via a letter like it is for phonics, that type of thing. We receive those letters directly from the districts to an inbox and attach it to the file. As time goes on, we're hoping to upgrade our systems or adopt new systems and make it easier for the LEAs to submit those types of verifications and even notify the applicants. But at this point, with our old system, we are taking those letters via email direct.
Okay. But you also said that there's a committee working on that, or a group from the reading group and certification. Is that correct, to establish criteria? That would need to be, if it was going to be a letter, it would establish the criteria for
Madam
that.
Chair,
Okay.
yes, that's correct. Right now, a lot of the work that's trying to be done on it is figuring out what that criteria, what the bar is, which is more of a literacy policy question. So that's why we're relying on those folks. And then Bruce sat in on that meeting and is helping provide insight as to what is workable from the CERT desk perspective. Because we did have, well, I personally had some ideas that would have made his life a little more challenging. So yes, we're working through that.
Okay, good, thank you. And are you including a special education specialist or teacher on that group as well to be able to address what the possibility of how a special education teacher, an outstanding teacher, could apply this way?
Madam Chair, we can, certainly. We're kind of in the nascent stages of it.
Well, that's just my request, because special education, we don't want to have criteria set that would absolutely exclude the special education teachers that do the work and prevent them from, because of the nature of the work, the nature of the students, preclude them from having an opportunity to go this route when there are a number of really outstanding teachers that we have working with students. Okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions on the endorsement? We can go to that marvelous guidance document. Thank you very much. That has all those, so much information. Okay. So let's see. I think Member Horn said she had some questions. Member Demler had some questions on that guidance document.
I just wanted to verify that if you have a reading endorsement, you do not have to go back and get the literacy endorsement. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Dr. Horn, yes, that's correct.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And Member Dumler, I know you had a couple questions. Was it on this doc that Jessica's pulled up, or was it on the PDF on appropriately certified?
It's thanks, Catcher. It's actually on the draft examples. The PDF document. I didn't know if so in the first page, shouldn't we have grades 4 and 5 on there? So we have kindergarten through grade 4, and then we just have grade 4. But then on the second page, it's kindergarten through grade 5. And the second box is grades 4 and 5. So I think grade 5 has to be on there. Am I correct about that?
Right, and it only lists self-contained. It does not, on the example 1, it does not address departmentalized schools.
Right. Yeah.
Easily, Member Dumler. This is an example of a much larger document that already exists that includes all positions, all grade spans and types of positions. And so in kind of drafting this quickly and thinking through and editing it, we didn't do the entirety of it. We just gave examples of it. And so this document already exists without these changes. It's a draft form that HR directors have that kind of helps guide them in terms of somebody wants to teach this, what kind of certifications and things might you need according to board rule. And so this is an attempt to add in this draft rule language, what that might look like in some certain circumstances.
Okay, I appreciate that. I just didn't want anybody to be confused by the missing grade 5 on there.
Is there a plan to add that into the grade 5 self-contained and departmentalized? Okay, all right, thank you.
This whole thing will be updated with once the rule is adopted. This document will be updated, as well as anything that kind of floats across on the other document with the FAQs. Of course, I do road shows with the HR departments. I'll be attending the ASPA luncheon in August. the fall conference. I kind of do the road shows, and we'll do an email blast to HR directors and superintendents and include the FAQ document and anything else that's bubbling up. It'll be a living document that we will update, resend as needed. This is kind of a long road to hoe, because for multiple years before anybody's really probably seeking it or applying for it, but we want to make sure everybody's in the loop. And it'll be part of my roadshow with ASPA and all the other groups and the Red Recruitment Retention to make sure everybody's aware. We're also working with EPPs. We've already been discussing with ed prep programs since January in their quarterly meetings, and we're going to ramp that up, work with Sean's team to support their implementation as well. There's several groups. There's a higher ed group that's meeting around making sure that the knowledge base is there and working with the professors and things that the ed prep programs want to bring forward. So there's a lot of work kind of already happening on the ed prep side, and then lots of plans, especially for this fall, once this kind of hits, of making sure that the LEAs are in the loop.
Thank you, Bruce.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Any other concerns? Thank you again so much, Bruce and Mara and your group, for being so responsive to the committee's questions and concerns, for getting out the clarification of this. I really also did like that the facts that were there that you had added there. Well, what's going to happen with that document, the guidance on certification requirements? Does that roll into that larger draft, or is this going to be something separate?
Chair Peasley and members, the PDF is this larger document that will be updated and inclusive of all the grade spans and apply all the endorsements we've added over the last year or so, as well as this new endorsement. The other document will, with the FAQs on the bottom, will be a guidance document that'll be posted on our website, email blast out to HR directors and superintendents, and they can pass that around. We'll update as needed, blast it out as needed. I'll use it as a roadshow tool as well to make sure that's in HR and leadership hands. We'll even provide it to that prep program so that they can share that information with their completers. It'll just be as available as we can make it and get into hands as many people. And as questions arise, we'll add the frequently asked questions. We'll modify and add that. And if we need to even change because something's not speaking clearly, we'll do that as time goes on.
And I do ask, can I request that does this also be sent out to the special education directors listserv? And that it goes. Thank you. We have some questions from members.
Yeah, Dr. Lighting was first.
No, it's solved in here, but I'm just curious. We talked about there is no real teacher of record, but we use teacher of record in the guidance, and it's explained. It solves our problem for the literacy endorsement. But I'm just curious, is that a term or is that not a term? Should we be using that term or should we not be using that term? And if it is a term, how do we define it? That kind of stuff. Because it was always commonly used when I was in the classroom. So.
Member Lighting and members, what we've found in discussions with title folks and our ed recruitment retention work is that it's not in statute or board rule, and so it people can define it differently, which is kind of an issue. It's kind of an assumption, and so we've started to use internally in my recruitment retention team as teacher of record is probably somebody that's responsible for the planning, delivery, and assessment of instruction. And I think that speaks a little bit to the IDA and some of the other federal stuff. So whatever lexicon you use in your LEA, I mean, that works for you because it's defined. The problem is statewide, there's some different takes on that. And it's not defined. And so that's one of the reasons why we really, based on the feedback you gave us last week, we really kind of were mulling over that definition. What do we really mean? And it's the instruction part. It's, it doesn't matter if you're giving a grade or if you're really doing the planning. If you're working with a child on literacy, then you need to have this endorsement.
Yeah, it's clear in here. I mean, you stated it clearly. I was just curious because it said it wasn't really a term, and so then I saw it there. So I was like, well, okay, thanks.
We'll look at that as well. Thank you.
And then Member Tabo had something as well.
Well, first of all, thank you for the guidance document. That was very well done. And I'm assuming as the other committee works on clarifying what the board is going to consider for the district certifying teachers have met those requirements, that document might grow so that there's a little more clarity, especially with the dyslexia part. I think that's probably the most challenging part for school districts, to see if teachers have that training and are able to work with those kids in a gen ed classroom. So any kind of further guidance on that bit of that would be really helpful, I think, for districts. I know for our district it would be.
It's a good note. Thank you. Okay, Madam Chair, I don't see any other hands or unmuting. So it would, sorry, as I scroll through here.
If there aren't any other questions, then perhaps it's time to call for a motion to send our 72615U literacy K-5 endorsement to the State Board of Education for consideration for adoption.
I so move.
And I'll second. This is Angel.
Is there any discussion? Okay, then if not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you so much.
Can we, Madam Chair, real quick, Member Garcia, I don't know if you were trying to unmute and vote there. It looked like, so I just want to make sure you have an opportunity if you want to get something on the record.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't find my mute. I have it's dark in my office because I haven't moved. So I actually am voting no on this. And if I may, I'd like to explain my vote. I mean, the work is incredible. Bruce, your office is amazing. I just re-upped my certificate, and 2 weeks later, a brand new one came, and it was just so amazing, and so grateful for all the work that has happened there. I appreciate the work of this committee, but I think two of the previous questions I had before, our state is bleeding educators and another hoop in front of them. Coming from a daughter of two early literacy researchers who I spent my whole life being their test subjects, I understand the relevance of this work. I'm just concerned of the barriers, and though it's 7 years out, that this is going to put on a lot of our teachers who are just at this point trying to just make it through the day. And so it is state law. I appreciate that. I knew this was going to pass. I'm grateful for all the work that was put in, but I think I'm trying to do my diligence as a representative of the of a classroom educator by voting no on this. So thank you.
So in terms of procedures, do we need to do the vote again and capture Marisol? Nay?
Madam Chair, no, I think we got it there. If Marisol is okay with that, I think we got that on the record as a voice vote that passed unanimously, with the exception of her no vote and her explanation. I think that's acceptable.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Then our last item on the agenda is future meetings, dates and times.
Yes, Madam Chair and members, we have another meeting on the books for August 3rd, which is 2 weeks from today. We don't have anything on that agenda right now, though Bruce and I do have a meeting this afternoon to discuss some possibilities. So stay tuned. We'll try to let you know one way or the other. If we do have what those possibilities could be, include some of there's some cleanup things that might need to happen, which is always something that it seems we need to do with the CERT rules. But also, you might remember there was a rule from a while ago. I don't know if we'll bring this back to CAC, but CAC recommended some rule changes around appropriate certification a while ago. We hit some resistance to that legislatively and otherwise. So those rules have just been open and have yet to be adopted by the board. So I don't know if we'll bring that back to CAC, but we might try to get those going at the board level or just stop them there. So the short of it is stay tuned. We might still have that August 3rd meeting, but we'll try to let you know at least by the end of this week whether or not it's happening, and then see if we can get you some materials as well, though that might be next week.
All right, thank you very much. If there's not any other updates, then we can adjourn this meeting of the Certification Advisory